Support WrestleTalk!
Should WWE scrap the Wildcard rule? I'm Ollie Davis. This is Chopper Pete Quinnell. Welcome to the WrestleRamble Saturday Magazine edition, where, yes, we are kicking off with Lance Storm's incredible suggestion, a bit of advice, an idea that he's come up with, that he's tweeted out there. We must be clear, it was in no way an urge.
Definitely not urging WWE to do anything. Just an idea, an opinion that he had. Crazy idea that he decided to tweet. What's up with these guys? We're going to move these real quick. Sorry. It was very important to get the wrestling figures and the Wrestle League trophy in good view. Yeah, and it's a really good idea.
It's a good idea.
I really like it.
If you haven't seen, Lance Storm tweeted earlier this week, can we just unify all these damn titles and make the champions the wild cards? Which is it's maybe not what I would do. I would personally, make the brand split a very distinct thing and then use those two brands to build up loads of guys. So you've got all these people on Raw, and you've got a proper main event scene and a mid-card scene, and then you've got SmackDown with a proper main event scene and a proper mid-card scene. There's loads of people who can be exposed weekly like that. But what's happened, and it's exactly what happened with the old brand split when you started to get these super shows, is WWE lose interest or the ratings fall, and they have a panic move where they start to blur the lines, and they just go, okay, so we've got a few top stars on SmackDown, a few top stars on Raw. Rather than building up more top stars for those brands, they just say, well, let's have those top stars on all the shows, so you get to see Shane McMahon twice a week rather than once, Roman Reigns twice a week rather than once, and it overexposes them, and it doesn't, So I would just make distinct brands that don't cross over and book them well.
Yeah, basically just do it better is what we're saying. But yeah, I'm absolutely the same as you. I love the brand split and everything that comes with it, and I think for how convoluted and stupid the Survivor Series normal stipulation is of Raw versus SmackDown and having the one night of year where Raw and SmackDown go head-to-head in direct competition, that's really dumb because the brand split means nothing. But if they made the brand split mean something, that would actually be a cool stipulation to have for Survivor Series. That would actually mean something, and it would be cool if they had, like, the winner of Raw vs. SmackDown at Survivor Series gets the number 30 spot in the Royal Rumble, or something. They put something to it, and they made Raw and SmackDown feel like two separate entities that occasionally, or I say occasionally, one night a year, go head-to-head. That would be great. And like you said, it gives them so much more room to build so many more stars. They just don't build more stars. You have so much more time. You have 5 hours a week, 3 on Raw and 2 on SmackDown. All of that time can be spent to build new stars and give fans the big stars that you've already made. And they're just like, well, we've made one, let's put that everywhere because that's the only one we've got. When in reality, you have so much more time to build other stars that you would have 10 big stars on your hands that you can then disperse where you like. And that would just make everything better. It would make the fans happy. It doesn't overexpose anyone. No one gets bored of the product, and then the ratings increase. And I know that sounds really simple while we're sitting here talking about it. Obviously, it's a lot more difficult than that in practice. But we've seen how simple it is. This year alone, we've seen how simple it is to build a star out of nowhere. Kofi Kingston, put him in a match, let him tell a story, boom, he's over. One match. That's all it took, is one match for Kofi Kingston to become an absolute top star in the company. Who's to say that that can't happen more if people were given the chances to do so?
Yeah. It's the most talented roster in any promotion in all of history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, even better, New Japan right now have loads of incredible in-ring talents. But WWE actually has hundreds.
Yeah.
Because the company's so big and they've just gathered up all of the best in-ring wrestlers in the world. Like maybe the top guys like Omega, Ospreay and Okada, I would say, they're split between AEW and New Japan. But everyone else is with WWE, really. And the problem with the brand split is, and it's a similar thing with communism, like the idea might be theoretically good, or at least worth a punt.
Yeah.
And in the first bits of the brand split, I think we are all like, yeah, this is cool, faction warfare. But just like communism, no one's ever done it right, have they? Practicality, the execution is very difficult, and it gives way to just one person dominating everything rather than equality for all. Mm-hmm. And I think that tends to be what happens with WWE. They start off like this, but then they get tired and they fall back. And yeah, so let's just say, for the purposes of this discussion, that just doing the brand split better isn't an option.
Okay. Yes.
So this is where Lance Storm's idea comes in really quite well. One of the ideas to increase the ratings, and I initially, after the first week or so, I was behind the Wildcard idea, because the second week of the Wildcard, it genuinely was a bit like, oh man, what a roster WWE have. You've got Sami Zayn now with Kofi Kingston, and then Roman Reigns does feel like a big-time presence. Kofi and Seth in the same ring, even though that was how it was sort of after WrestleMania anyway, with the Superstar shake-up. So the Wildcard was good, but now you've got to a point where it doesn't mean anything. That, like, the wildcard rule is about as stuck to as the brand split, where this week on SmackDown, the limit is 4 acts. That could be as many as 20 people.
Yeah.
You could just have, like, the Undisputed Era would count as 1.
Yeah.
Lucha House Party as 1. Mm-hmm. But this week they had 6 individual wrestling acts, which is way above what they were meant to do. So even the wildcard rule isn't working. Mm-hmm. So Lance's idea and there's so much confusion over who decides the wild cards.
I think that's the main problem with the wild card, is when they introduced it, you could tell it was a panic move because it hadn't been thought through at all. They said it's going to be 3 talents, and then later on they were like, 4 instead. And then they provided no rules as to how it's made. No one knows whether someone can just freely walk over or they have to be given permission to go over. The Usos said they can go to SmackDown because it's Roman's yard now and they can just go. So is that different to the wild card? Are they part? They don't explain anything, which makes it so much worse, because then when someone shows up, you're like, oh my god, it's this thing. Like, maybe like a heel shows up on Raw and you're like, oh, Shane McMahon, he's forced that heel to go over to Raw, boo, and that he's allowed them to do that thing and interrupt in this match or whatever it is. But then if someone turns up, you're just like, I guess they just turned up now. And I think that's the biggest problem with the wildcard, is there's no rules, there's no stipulations to it, so you can't get invested in it because it just changes. No one cares, so why should the viewer? That's the main problem, I think, for me.
Yeah, totally. So I guess the best way is to formalize it. And if you really do want your top stars going across both brands, the way to do that is to have your champions. That, in theory, your champions should be amongst your top stars at least. So Lance's idea is to unify all the belts. Mm-hmm. So just one set of tag champs, just one world champion, just one mid-card champion, so the United States and Intercontinental titles together. It's effectively what the women's tag team champions are right now, in that the Iconics can float between the brands. And it does, like, from an outside viewer, if you're getting into WWE now, I would imagine it's quite confusing. Like, oh, so there's 2 world champions.
Yep.
How does that work with one's the universe?
Yeah,
right, that's bigger.
WWE or universe?
Yeah,
yeah, that one's bigger. Yeah.
So, I mean, when I fell out of... Because I fell out of fandom when the first brand split was introduced, just before, and I came back to it a couple of years later. Now, it always kept me at arm's length. I was like, well, it's a bit weird that there's 2 world champions, and especially like a couple of years later, the world heavyweight champion, or whatever one was on SmackDown, was just seen as the opener. It was the new mid-card belt, really,
the mid-card belt,
rather than being treated as it's a brand's distinct top title. And Kofi's WWE Championship is pretty good at the moment because they booked him so strong. But if they keep booking him against Dolph Ziggler, Kevin Owens, these people who have been presented like mid-card acts, it's just going to keep on feeling that way. So unifying the championships would, in theory, help the prestige of the titles, and it also gets round the wild card thing.
Yeah, so I think I'm very hesitant to unify titles in the first place, just because that's less things for people to fight for. When WWE have a roster the size they do, there's already not enough time for everyone to get featured and everyone to be pushed and everyone to be spotlighted in the correct way. When you take away things for people to be fighting for, that means you then need more storytelling, you need more feuds, you need more writers working on various things like that. So when you have less titles to fight for, it becomes more exclusive and I think more prestigious for the top guys to fight for that one title. But then everyone else that would have maybe held the Intercontinental but now isn't in the combined title picture, they fall into nothingness because they now have nothing to fight for. So that, I think, you might see a smaller roster of more stars in theory, but the huge roster that they have, some of the more outside talents that might have got a shot at the Intercontinental or the US might just fall into nothingness off the end of it.
Yeah.
So I'm hesitant to form titles together. However, if you have a distinct brand split and all your stars on Raw and all your stars on SmackDown stay on their brands, but the only ones that go over are the champions, that makes the champions feel really big time. That makes your champions feel really special because you're like, these guys are over here, these guys are over here, but these guys can go anywhere because they've earned that right because they beat this guy for this championship, and that means a lot. And that makes your titles feel great and your champions feel even more respected and prestigious. And that would be great. That would be a great side effect of it. So I think there's definitely pros and cons. But I think overall it might be a good thing. It's really hard to say because it depends what way they go with it because they can always screw it up.
Yeah, so that there are a couple of problems with it. So all those guys who no longer have a title to fight for, something that's been missing in WWE for quite a while, and it's something I used to love, is the number one contendership fights.
Oh my God, yes.
So while you've got the main title feud going on, you've also got another feud going on just for the right to get the next shot, which elevates that title even more, fleshes out the main event scene. So that's something they could do. But if you've got the champions on both brands, and say you've got AJ Styles is feuding with Seth Rollins on Raw, but then Seth Rollins goes over to SmackDown. We saw it with Becky Lynch. Does he then have another feud on SmackDown with someone else? Or do you just keep, for that pay-per-view cycle, Seth Rollins on Raw and SmackDown is headlined by the Intercontinental title holder? Which could damage SmackDown's perception as a B brand. So it is a difficult thing to juggle, unfortunately.
Because then you could end up with a similar situation with where we were before, where you have the top title on a Raw feud, Seth Rollins versus whoever, and then you have your mid-card Intercontinental US Championship holder over on SmackDown, and then that's just where they stay. They stop doing the cross-brand thing, and then they have all their top stars on Raw, and they have all the mid-carders on SmackDown, and that's where those feuds happen.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a place they could get to, because it's easier to keep it that way. Instead of having to think, well, they could go over here and have a feud with this person, you could just say, well, we'll just keep them here in Baron Corbin's mid-card of Vortex. And mid-card of Vortex? Yeah, that's what it said. Mid-card Vortex, and then you can just have them constantly feuding with each other over on Raw, which is something that they're quite liable to do. And then you have all your mid-card feuds over on SmackDown, and then it just comes exactly what we had. It's like the World Heavyweight Championship being the mid-card. It's the same thing.
So what you're suggesting, Pete, is we just need long-term booking and forethought put into this.
Yeah.
It's a lofty expectation.
All we need is a brand split done right. That's it.
Let us know what you thought in the comments below, whether this is a viable idea. I think overall I was leaning towards no there. If I had to make you say yes or no,
I'd say no as well.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth talking about.
Yeah, but put the comments down below. Of course, press the thumbs up as well. Subscribe button. But now, let's get into your Patreon mailbag. While Luke's away, we won't have any crap gimmick wrestling submissions, unfortunately, because we don't know where they are.
No, I think they get emailed to Luke, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have access to emails Luke account, Luke's email account, and he forwarded me some stuff for the podcast, but none of the crap gimmicks, so we don't have any.
But they'll be back soon. Luke's only got one more week away.
And then after that they'll be back. So fear not.
chat us up with some Patreon mailbags. Of course, if you want to have your questions answered on the WrestleRamble Saturday edition, go over to Patreon and become a pledge hammer. And anyone who donates can post in the community tab, put mailbag in the subject heading, and we'll answer them on the show.
So, we've got one from that guy who wants to support, who says, "Hello everyone, except the WrestleTalk #1 enemy, Mr. Skip Sheffield."
Ooh,
Oof.
maybe his #2 enemy now.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've got a lot of people on our backs now. What is your favourite performance from a wrestler in a film?
Batista, Drax,
Yeah,
Guardians of the
Batista,
Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
That's really easy. Really, really easy.
Next.
If we're excluding Guardians of the Galaxy, because it's MCU and that's different, I guess. The Rock, Fast and Furious 5.
Yeah, it's probably Hobbs, isn't it?
Yeah, he's
But
pretty good at that.
While you say 5, I might say 7 because he did kick a nuclear missile while ice skating.
Haven't seen 7.
Or was it 8?
I think I've seen 7. I haven't seen 8. I've watched up to and including 7 was the one where they had Ronda Rousey and then they drove the car
Yes.
out of the skyscraper.
Yes.
Across to the other one. That was 7.
You know, my expectations were so ridiculously high for that movie. I was underwhelmed by that scene. Fast and Furious 6 is one of the most exhilarating cinema experiences
I really
I've
liked
ever
Fast
had.
6.
And
It's stupid, but I love Fast 6.
And it ended with the Staith appearing.
Yeah.
Which was like the ultimate... I feel like that whole movie is booked like a wrestling card. And you got the
Yeah.
surprise return. That was John Moxley running in at the end, having the Staith appear. Of
course,
and
yeah.
I had high expectations for 7.
Yeah.
But now Hobbs and Shaw,
Yeah, August 2nd that
The
comes out.
Rock and the Staith
Yeah.
together. Oh,
I mean, you already had The Rock and Vin Diesel. And now you got Rock and Staith.
but Staith is
Staith.
better than Diesel. They're,
Yeah.
they're different. They're different.
They're different.
They're different sort of appeals.
I always admire Vin Diesel's voice, though.
Yeah,
How it can go so low is beyond me.
it's not his real voice.
It's so gravelly all the time.
Puts it on.
Yeah, definitely. We've got another one from Nicholas Andrews, who said, if you have to see one, which would you rather see? Baron Corbin defeats Seth Rollins to win the title at Stomping Grounds in a boring 25-minute match of just rest holds, or Shane defeats Seth for the title in the main event of SummerSlam? That's a hard one.
Shane and Seth at SummerSlam, because at least that will be a kind of Shane McMahon match. And say what you will about Shane as a performer, his big time pay-per-view matches are usually quite spectacular.
That's true. Yeah.
So at least there'll be a load of bonkers stuff happening.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually.
And the way WWE has presented him, there is storyline justification for having him as a very unworthy champion for
Yeah.
a babyface to unseat. This is a rock and a hard place.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
And I'm not talking the good kind of rock and a hard place,
No.
like the literal rock and Jason Statham's abs,
Yeah.
when pressed in between them. Mm-hmm. It's the bad kind.
It's the bad kind of rock and hard place. I'm probably going to have to agree with you. I was originally going to say Corbin, but then because I was thinking, well, it's not SummerSlam, then you can have someone just win it off him the next pay-per-view and whatever. We'd have a bad match and that's fine, whatever. We have bad matches all the time. But now I'm thinking that, like, at least we'll get something out of it with Shane. And it's going to be funny as well. If Shane wins, I'm just going to laugh too much. And as, like, a jaded wrestling fan, not in a good way. Like, it's bad for casual viewers to watch that and just be like, that's bad. But for me personally, I'll enjoy it loads.
I think it'll be more funny as a joke to have Corbin lock on a 25-minute rest hold and then Seth to eventually tap.
That would be amazing.
Or pass out from boredom.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be so
They
much
drop
better.
the arm.
Yeah. And he's
3
just
times.
like, no,
Yeah.
I'm done now. Cool. We've got another from Damian Wade Wilson Fisk, who says, how did you convince SoCal Val to be part of Screen Stalker?
Because she's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we sort of knew her in another circle anyway. We asked her if she wanted to be a part of it. She's a huge movie fan. She's got a weirdly encyclopedic knowledge of just actors. If you're like, you say, who is that? And she'll go, oh, it's this person who's been in this.
They were married to this person.
Yeah. It's like, you are IMDb.
Yeah, she
aren't
really
you?
is. And she likes everything. She's so optimistic about everything. Even when stuff really sucks, she's like, no, it's great.
Yeah, it's
She's
tough
very good,
sometimes. She'll come in and goes, oh my God, have you seen... I can't do her accent.
You can.
Oh
Try
my
it.
God.
Oh my God, guys.
Joey Styles at the moment. Oh my God, what did you think of Game of Thrones? And she'll have a big beaming smile on her face, and we'll all go, she'll be like, you didn't like it?
Yeah. Classic Val, that.
But it's a good antidote to our world-weary cynicism.
I just wish I had her optimism about everything. I'm very jealous of it. We got another from John Smith. He says, good afternoon, Pete, Ollie, Laurie, Randy, and also Luke, who won't hear it, but still, nice to know. Do you think Baron Corbin could ever flourish as a face? He has a great look and cool music, excellent mic skills, and I think he has a unique moveset when he isn't forced into doing rest holds and other typical heel stuff. Or do you think he could be like Elias/Miz before 2019, where he'd only work well as a heel? Keep up the good work, and it's great to see Pete feature more. Thanks. Now we need more Laurie on podcasts.
So, I would say Corbin was a face at the start of his run. In NXT, when he was just squashing people as the Lone Wolf, and the crowd would start... As soon as the bell rung, the crowd would start counting. 1, 2, 3. To just be, boom, end of days, pin. He was over as a badass tweener, if anything. And then that sort of collided into a feud with Bull Dempsey, I believe it was. And that was really good stuff. He wasn't full-on heel. But I think that ship has sailed.
Yes.
He's been this form of Baron too long, and he's not Bray Wyatt. He's not going to be able to magically transform his character like Bray has.
No.
So he did flourish as a face briefly, but I can't see that ever coming back.
See, I'd be hesitant to say never.
Yeah.
Just because no one ever really knows what's going to happen in wrestling as a whole.
Yeah.
There's some stuff that completely surprised you. I would have said you would never see Kofi Kingston as a WWE champion, ever, because he's been a mid-card act for like 10 years. Never going to break through to top scene, but he did. And I think they've raised a very good point, saying that Baron Corbin's moveset is one that people can pop for, big, with Deep Six, End of Days, his run around the ring post thingy that he does. He's got a really good moveset.
Yeah.
So I think he'd need a hard reset, and he'd need time away from the audience to start with. But I think there's a way. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I think there's a way to make him a face and be good at it. Maybe.
Usually my answer is, well, go to AEW.
Yeah.
But he doesn't feel like that sort of guy. He
No, not at
feels
all.
very much like I'm a WWE guy.
Absolutely. And I think he works well in WWE. I think his style works very well for it. I'd like to see him as a face, honestly, because I want to like Baron. I want to like him.
You can like him as a mid-card, properly exposed heel.
That's true. He's a very good heel, and I like the things he does.
Yeah.
I just don't like him because he's overexposed. I want to like him, though, because he's cool. We've got another one from Mr. One, who apparently, Randy Andy Datson has added a note saying that he tried to do his Super Showdown predictions after the show had started.
Love those people.
Can't do that, because the show's already started. Shocking. He says, unpopular opinion, Becky's been flattened out because her in-ring work doesn't live up to her character. Sure, she's safe and proficient, but nothing spectacular. I guess you could say the same about Cena, but Cena's character was completely different.
But Cena's appeal was never flattened out. There was always loud reactions. I think I do know what you mean, because out of all the people, Becky isn't the most spectacular in the ring. I mean, I would probably put all the other horsewomen above her, actually, with Sasha at the top, Charlotte, then Bayley, if I had to rank them.
Yeah.
But as the complete package, promo-wise, and sort of that crossover into the mainstream, I'd have her tied with Charlotte.
Yeah.
That's probably an unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Charlotte's really good. So, I don't agree. I think she was quite obviously flattened out by the booking from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania, and crucially, when she apologized to the McMahons for no reason and no storyline payoff.
Yeah.
She was an anti-authority character, and she apologized to Stephanie and Trips.
Yeah.
it really took the wind out the sails. Not immediately, but that was when it started to decline, and that whole storyline was completely overbooked.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, I don't think you need to be an amazing in-ring worker to be a mega mainstream star.
No, that's true.
I think if you've got the look and the promo ability, and you're a 10 in those areas, you could get by with like a 6 or 7 in the ring.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can't be terrible in the ring, of course. But, well, then again,
Goldberg.
Hogan.
Yeah.
He wasn't very good at wrestling, really.
Yeah.
That's might be an unpopular opinion. I don't know. But I slightly agree with this, but I think it's more of a booking problem again, in that I think her matches have been booked to be very wrestling. And her character isn't very wrestling. She's more like a Stone Cold, just come down, punch you, beat you up, kick you, and leave kind of thing. And then her matches, she just like rest holds and arm drags and that, which doesn't quite correlate. But again, I think that's not her fault. That's a booking problem, because we need to have a wrestling match when a character doesn't feel like a wrestling. Well, it feels like a wrestling character, but doesn't feel like a character who would wrestle. It's just a character who would fight. And I think that's a key difference for it. So I don't think it's necessarily Becky's fault, but I do get what you're saying with it.
Yeah, because all of the biggest time she's connected on that level are her brawls with Charlotte.
Yeah.
And it's
when she got punched in the face.
Yeah,
Nia.
yeah. So something real feels shooty. Let's have one more, because we've got to unfortunately get out of here. We've got some super secret special stuff to do that we'll announce on Monday.
Yay.
Exciting.
Very exciting.
But yeah, apologies for the quick ramble this week.
We've got Darthalmo, who says, I have a feeling that WWE is trying to recreate the Attitude Era, the Attitude Era Mr. McMahon character, but with Shane McMahon only with PG era elements. I say this in light of recent news that Shane will be the one to dethrone Kofi for the WWE title. What do you guys think? Well, first off, that is purely a rumor from WrestleVotes.
It's not even a rumor.
It's WrestleVotes just speculating. He was literally just like, I reckon they might be putting Shane for Kofi. And that was it.
It's not even that. It's one of their sources backstage says, I wouldn't be surprised if this
I wouldn't be
happened.
surprised if. Yeah.
It's like that was a tweet on the backstage feelings. No actual plans.
No, none at all.
And he's very clear about that. And we've been very clear about that whenever we've said it. So yeah, but it's sometimes things take a life of their own. Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. Maybe not the Mr. McMahon character, but the McMahons see themselves as the biggest stars in the company.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they've harped on the same kind of angle since the Stone Cold days. They have the Mr. McMahon character. They'll put in a McMahon to be a heel authority figure, to have the babyface try and overcome them. They did it just with Becky Lynch in the lead up to WrestleMania. They had Stephanie McMahon constantly and Triple H constantly belittling her.
And Kofi Kingston with Vince.
They constantly do the McMahon character. So they're building Shane more than the other ones, I'd say, because the other ones were kind of already there. And it's like, oh, we're here, we're the authority. And now with Shane, it's like it's a steady build, and he's putting himself over as a wrestler. So I get what they're trying to say with the Vince comparison with the WWE title. I don't think he's going to win it, though. I really hope not, anyway, because I would be furious.
Maybe he'll get really close, and then Brock Lesnar will cash in.
That's not a bad shout. I like that.
But Shane is just... Vince McMahon is one of the better wrestling promos of all time.
Absolutely.
Shane is...
Not.
In the bottom third
Yeah.
of wrestling promos of all time. He's not an engaging screen presence. He's an engaging bump taker.
Oh, very much so.
But yes, thank you very much for getting all your Patreon questions into the mailbag. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. We are a bit stretched with Luke away on holiday, but it'll be back to normal soon. Please click the videos that have just appeared on the desk to catch up with the latest awesome WrestleTalk things, and this button right here, which will make you a pledge hammer on WrestleTalk's Patreon. I've been Ollie Davis. This has been Chopper Pete Quinnell, and that was Rambling.